Grab a cup of tea and a cozy blanket, get comfy, and get ready for a marathon of easy fall recipes. I have more than 35 recipes for you today. Now keep in mind, this is a compilation video, so you're going to see me through the years. I'm pregnant in some areas, and my kids are all different ages. I'm not currently pregnant, and they are now 4, 8, and 10, but it's going to be fun to kind of reminisce at how things have changed, but also enjoy all of these amazing recipes. I know you're going to love them. I'm going to start off by making a sweet potato shepherd's pie, which is one of my favorite budget classics. In the fall, it's something that I make every year, and it is so easy and so cheap. I'm starting off with 1.5 pounds of these sweet potato steamers that I got at Walmart, but you can just grab whatever sweet potatoes you have. I know that Aldi sells them for really inexpensive in like a 3-pound bag. So you just need 1 to 2 pounds of those, and you can steam them or boil them. I will put a recipe down in the description box for you. I just did mine in the microwave like it said on the package. Then you'll also want 1 medium yellow onion chopped and 3 medium cloves of garlic finely minced. And then the recipe calls for 1 cup of beef broth and 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. So I'm just using 1 cup of warm water and 1 cube of beef bouillon, and then the 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. And you just want to mix this together. We're going to make kind of a slurry that we're going to add later to our mixture. I have made a shepherd's pie like this, or sometimes people call it a cottage pie, with many different meats. So sometimes if you have like a leftover shredded chicken or a leftover really any meat, or you have fresh ground beef like I happen to have, or fresh ground turkey or chicken, all of those things work so well in this, and they are all delicious. So it doesn't exactly matter what you have, and that's why this is kind of a favorite budget meal, because you can swap things in and out, no problem. You don't need to go out and buy anything special. You can usually make it work with what you have in your fridge or freezer. I'm just cooking my ground beef over medium-high heat until it's cooked all the way through and no longer pink. Then I added in my onion and cooked for about 6 minutes until the onion softened slightly. Now, as far as vegetables go in this, you can use what you have. If I had fresh carrots, I would have chopped those up and put them in with the onion, but unfortunately I did not. You can also use like a frozen mixed vegetable. I'm personally going to use a can of mixed vegetables because that's what I had on hand. And even though I'm looking at the can, I'm like, this has potatoes in it and there's potatoes on top. It was fine. Like, it's delicious. Don't worry too much about what that mixture is. The original recipe calls for fresh carrots to be added with the onions and then some frozen peas to be added later, but make it your own. Once that onion was cooked down, I did add in 1 drained can of mixed vegetables and my chopped garlic. You also want to add 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, and I just had mine from the freezer. Whenever I open a can of it, I do make sure to put whatever is left in tablespoon portions in my freezer. Then you want to add about a tablespoon of what they call woody herbs. So I'm using rosemary and sage, along with about 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now for me, sage is just the quintessential fall spice. I use it all the time in my fall cooking, so it just feels like it to me. I love it. You just want to cook that for about a minute, stirring constantly to make sure that everything is well incorporated. And then you can stir in your cornstarch mixture. And if you are adding a cup of peas and you did the carrots earlier, this is when you would add the peas. We're also going to add in a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce and about 1/4 teaspoon of ground pepper. Once the mixture has thickened about 2 to 3 minutes, you can just remove this from the heat. And in the meantime, we'll get the sweet potato mash finished so that we can make the whole casserole. This mixture is super easy. I'm just using a hand masher, but if you prefer to use like your mixer, go ahead and do that. I have removed all of the skins from the sweet potatoes. I actually just waited a little bit for them to cool down, and I just pulled the skins off. But if you were cooking your sweet potatoes any other way, you could just actually peel the skins off beforehand. That's fine too, whatever's easier for you. To that, I'm adding 1/2 cup of sour cream and 2 tablespoons of melted butter, because everything is better with butter, right? This mash is super simple and super easy. I also think that I've made it many times where I didn't have the sour cream, and that's fine too. Just mash up those sweet potatoes with some salt and butter, and they're going to be good. Like, this is going to be great no matter how you make it. I also love this casserole because you can either make it when you're ready to eat it, or you can make it ahead of time. It actually goes really well in the fridge or freezer, and you can just reheat it when the time is right. Just want to pour all of your ground beef mixture into the bottom of a 9x13 pan, and then top that with your sweet potato mash. And we're going to cook this at 425 degrees for about 20 minutes. I also happen to have some crescent rolls on hand. These are so inexpensive and such a nice little warm addition to a meal like this. This really is a family favorite, and it's so awesome because you can just use so many things that you may already have on hand in your house and don't have to worry about buying too many ingredients at all. The combination of the beef broth and the Worcestershire sauce really brings a depth of flavor to this that is like no other. And here Julian will give us his thoughts on this delicious meal.
10 out of 10.
You like it? For this next one, I'm making maple sausage stuffed chicken and pumpkin risotto. And I actually have Texas Roadhouse rolls on the side too. And I will put the video where I made those down in the description box below because those are fantastic. This is another one of those kind of wing it recipes based off of what I have in my cabinets at that time. But I made this up years ago and I'm still in love. I'm using chicken breast, celery, some stuffing that I still have from last Thanksgiving, brown and served maple sausage, apple, and onion. Now you don't need celery, but if you have it, go ahead and slice up a stalk. I do love celery in my stuffing like at Thanksgiving, so I just always think if you're making stuffing, why don't you add some celery because it gives it a nice crunch and a nice flavor. I'm going to talk a lot about substitutes with this one because I feel like there is just so much that can be done. So I am going to use one apple, but you could use a pear if you have it, and if you don't have any fruit like that, you don't even really have to use a fruit in it. It's going to taste delicious even if you just have like the stuffing and the sausage. That's going to be just fine. I am peeling my apple today and then going to dice it, but I've also made this without peeling the apple, so it's whatever you're feeling that day. And I'm actually only going to use about half of the apple in the end, so however much you feel like is right for your amount of chicken will work. I'm using 2 chicken breasts, but I am going to cut them in half. Alternatively, you can also use pork chops with this. I have made this with pork chops before and it's absolutely delicious. So that's another option. And I know that pork chops go on sale a ton this time of year. You can even get those packs that are like different sizes and shapes. And this is perfect for that because we're just going to pound it out thin and then roll it up. So it doesn't really matter what exact type of pork that you have. I'm also dicing up an onion, but you could use a teaspoon of onion powder if that's all you have. In a large pot over medium heat, and I don't even know what is up with my filming right now, but hey, it's what I did. You want to add about a tablespoon of butter, or you can use whatever type of oil that you have, and then your onion, your celery, and your apple. And then you just want to cook that down for about 5 minutes or so until your onion is soft. In the meantime, I have microwaved my maple sausage. You can use like a regular breakfast maple sausage if you want, or you could even use Italian sausage, whatever you like. Maybe put like a little maple syrup in it, whatever you have on hand. I know sometimes I find that on sale. It's in my freezer. It's what I'm going to use, right? It's still going to be good. You just want that little bit of maple flavor. So however you make it work, do it. I grabbed these because they're super cheap. They're like less than $2 to get a whole package of them. And I really like them. This is how I originally started making the recipe. Like back in college, I think. I was like, you know, grab a cheap package of sausage and make something fall flavored. And I just loved it. So that's my take on the whole maple stuffed chicken thing. And then I'm just going to add my sausage right into my pan there with my onions and celery and apples with 1 cup of water and 1 teaspoon of chicken bouillon. And you can use chicken broth if you have it, or you can just use water and salt if that's what you have. It's going to be fine too. And I'm following the instructions on the back of the package. So I can't remember. I added about half the package of the stuffing. And then I followed the instructions for how much liquid to use with that. So I think half a package equals about 1 cup of liquid. You can read it and kind of figure it out for yourself. But you just want to hydrate your stuffing, basically. And then you can take that off the heat once it's hydrated and it seems like the right consistency for you. If you like yours drier, like go ahead and put a little less water. If you like yours a little bit softer, then go ahead and add more. So that's kind of your take on how you like your stuffing. And then I have 2 huge chicken breasts here. So I'm going to slice them in half and then I'm actually going to flatten them out. If you have thin sliced chicken, that's going to make it even easier for you. If you're using pork chop, if it's like a thin sliced one, you're probably going to want to use the meat mallet and flatten that out too. But if you're using a thicker one, you can actually kind of cut a hole in, like through the middle and make it so you can stuff inside the pork chop. I've done that before and that was really, really fun and delicious too. So just depends on how you want to do it. I am using a meat mallet here, like the flat side with some saran wrap, but I have seen people just use a rolling pin too, and that's a good option. And then you can use your favorite chicken seasoning. I'm just using a poultry seasoning. You can just use salt and pepper or whatever you have on hand, whatever you think would taste good. Like I said, sage is so good in a fall meal, so that's a good thing. Salt, pepper, sage, rosemary, something like that. That'd be delicious on your chicken too. And then I'm just going to do my best to stuff them and roll them, and they are awesome. I'm just going to put mine in like a fall type pie plate. You can do a 13 by 9. You can do a sheet pan. I kind of like putting it in like the pie plate because then you can kind of put the stuffing in and around because you'll have some extra, and it just makes like a really nice plate and meal, and it turns out delicious. I cooked mine at 350 degrees for about 40 minutes. You kind of want to watch it, make sure that you're not overcooking, undercooking. It kind of depends on how thin your meat is, especially if you're doing like a stuffed pork chop. That'll take closer to an hour if you kind of cut the slit in it. But if you made them thinner, they're going to cook closer to what the chicken did. But you do want to make sure that it is fully cooked all the way through, and it will be absolutely delicious. And while that cooks up, I am going to make pumpkin risotto. And is risotto super simple and easy? Well, as far as ingredients, it might be, but it does take a little bit of time and a little bit of patience. But every once in a while, it is just totally worth it. In a large saucepan or skillet, add in 1 tablespoon of olive oil and a pinch of salt and 1 chopped onion. I'm going to cook this for about 2 minutes on medium-low heat. You can say hi to Elmo. Say hi to Elmo over there in the corner. There's like kids' toys everywhere these days, and it's just real life. After that couple minutes, add in a couple of minced cloves of garlic, or you can do a teaspoon of garlic powder and about a teaspoon of dried sage. After about 30 seconds, just add in about 1.5 cups of arborio rice. And you're going to cook that until translucent, stirring constantly for about a minute. You definitely don't want to let it brown. And then you're going to deglaze the pan with about 1/3 cup of white wine. If you don't have white wine, you can just use water or some chicken stock. Then you're going to want 4 cups of chicken stock, broth, or chicken bouillon as I'm using. And then you want to add 1/2 cup to a cup at a time and stir to incorporate. And you want to cook it down until the liquid is almost absorbed, and you basically stir it constantly. You're going to do this until there's no stock left. So it does take about 20 minutes or so to make sure that you're stirring and cooking down and stirring and cooking down. As long as you've been patient enough and really waited until the liquid was absorbed every time and stirred constantly, once all of your liquid is gone, your rice should be completely cooked all the way through. So you're not going to have like any crunchy flavor, but it also shouldn't be pasty and totally mushy. You should have pieces of rice that are distinct pieces of rice that are creamy and delicious. At that point, you want to stir in about 1/2 cup of pumpkin puree, just straight pumpkin, 100% pumpkin, not pumpkin pie, and 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan cheese. And you can just keep this on the heat for just another minute or so to melt all of the cheese and heat up the pumpkin. And that's all you want to do. And your risotto is done, and it's absolutely delicious. Now, this is like relatively simple with things that I usually have on hand, like Parmesan cheese. A can of pumpkin is, very popular this time of year, so I always grab a few of those. And I do have arborio rice usually in my cabinet. I might not be saying that right, so apologize if I'm not, but it's something that I use, every once in a while. So it's worth purchasing kind of like a bigger container of it so that I'm ready when the time is right to make a risotto or something like that. And it is absolutely delicious and totally worth it. This is the wonderful chicken. You can see I could cut it to make sure that it was cooked all the way through after it comes out of the oven. And this was our fall meal on the table, and I was just so pleased and so happy. It is one of my absolute favorites. Next up, I'm making a chicken and squash sheet pan dinner. We're making this in just one pan, and we're going to be able to use 99 cents a pound chicken thighs and 99 cents a pound butternut squash. So this is so inexpensive. The whole dinner came to less than $5. I have a pretty small butternut squash here. I also think you could use any squash that you had, or, hey, a neighbor gave you, or you were able to get on sale. You just want to dice this up into cubes, kind of like potatoes. And then I am going to cut up a couple of onions because I love onion in mine, but you totally don't have to do that. You can use onion powder if you need to, just about a teaspoon. And then I'm going to throw 10 whole cloves of garlic in there. You do not have to do that, but it does roast up amazing. And I serve mine with biscuits, and I was able to actually just take the roasted garlic and rub it right over a biscuit, and it was so delicious. That's one of those things that feels so indulgent and gourmet, yet it's actually like pennies on the dollar. It's so cheap to make. I'm also adding 6 chicken thighs to the bowl, and you could do chicken legs, drumsticks if you have them. You could do chicken leg quarters. Whatever you have is going to work here, especially the cheaper the better, right? And then to that you want to add 3 tablespoons of olive oil, about 3/4 of a tablespoon of salt, a teaspoon of black pepper, and I'm using 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. And if you want to, you can just use regular paprika if you don't like the smoked. And a sprinkle of crushed chili peppers if you'd like. And then the recipe calls for fresh thyme, but I didn't have that, so I used about a teaspoon of dried thyme. This is a very simple yet flavorful seasoning, and you just want to mix everything really well together. I just love using just one bowl for this just to make sure that everything gets well coated. It worked really, really well. And then you just want to pour everything onto a well-coated sheet pan. So I just used mine that had a baking mat on it, but you can use parchment paper or you could use tin foil, whatever you want to just cover it up and make sure that this doesn't stick to the bottom of your pan. You want to bake this at 375 degrees for 1 hour. And the recipe says to then increase the heat to 425 and bake for another 10 to 20 minutes. But at the hour mark, my chicken was super golden, fully cooked through, so I did not need to do that. With this, I just served some like take and bake super cheap Aldi biscuits, and like I said, I was able to rub the garlic over that. Oh my goodness, it was so delicious. This is such a inexpensive, wonderful fall meal, and I feel like if you ever get chicken at a restaurant, for me at least, it's dry. This is so juicy and fabulous. It is just such a winner. For this next one, we're going to use the 99-cent a pound chicken to make Ina's roasted chicken. And instead of carrots, I'm going to use sweet potatoes because those are also on sale this time of year. And so are carrots. Carrots are delicious too. But I wanted to use sweet potatoes because that's what I had on hand. So always think use what you have on hand, right? I'm also noting a color aesthetic here. We have very like orangey golden colors, which makes sense. Those are fall colors. And it makes sense that the food is that fall color too. You can see this chicken is actually from my freezer. I had bought it on sale in April, and it was time to use it, but I did get it on sale for 99 cents a pound. It's a rather small chicken coming in at less than 3 pounds, so it was only $2.92. We can make this whole dinner, again, for less than $5. I'm using the sweet potatoes because that's what I had on hand, but you can get carrots for less than 99 cents a pound these days, and you can just chop those up and throw those in there. I decided to chop my potatoes into like half circles and make them a little bit bigger than I have in the past, because the last time I made this recipe with carrots, the carrots actually burnt because it was cooking at a high temperature. So you do want to consider that if you are cooking carrots, either add them later if they're small, or if they're bigger, just cut them into large chunks. I also cut an onion into wedges and put the potatoes and the onion in a bottom of a 13x9, but if you have like a roasting pan, you can put them in there too. And then my chicken was so small. The original recipe says to use a whole lemon and cut it in half. Obviously, if you don't have it, that's fine. You can squeeze some lemon juice in the cavity of the chicken if you can. If not, that's going to work fine too. And then I do have one whole head of garlic, and I cut that in half. Again, if you don't have it, you can just do garlic powder. It's totally fine. But what I was saying about the lemon is I could only use half because only half of it actually fit into the chicken. And then you could see that I was taking 2 tablespoons of butter, and I'm just microwaving that and melting it down. You can melt down, or you can even use just olive oil or whatever oil you have too if you don't have fresh butter. Chickens are pretty forgiving like that, which is very nice. I'm just going to pat my chicken dry and then cover it thoroughly with salt and pepper. You also want to make sure to get the salt and pepper into the cavity of the chicken. And I forgot to say, obviously, and maybe it's not obvious, but remove the giblets or whatever else is inside the chicken. You want to make sure that it has an empty cavity. You don't want to cook it with any of those things in there, but liberally with salt and pepper all over, cover that chicken, season it up. You're going to want lots of flavor in there. And then we're going to stuff it with, like I said, mine only fit 1 lemon. If yours is a little bit larger, go ahead and put both halves of the lemon in there, and then your head of garlic. And then the recipe calls for fresh thyme, but I didn't have that, so I just was using a sprinkle of dried thyme and just putting that all inside of the cavity of the chicken as well. And then I'm just going to brush the outside of the chicken with the butter and make sure that it's fully covered. It's nice because once you put the butter on the cold chicken, it actually hardens kind of onto the chicken, and then it makes this sticky surface. And we're going to put more salt and pepper on the outside of the chicken, so it gives it even more flavor. This butter does a lot for it. Like, this is my favorite chicken roasting recipe. I find that it's never dry. It is always so flavorful. It is always so juicy, which is amazing. So I don't know if it's the butter. I don't know if it's the fact that you're putting lots of salt and pepper. I don't know if it's the time, whatever it is so good and so worth it. Then I'm just going to toss my sweet potatoes and onion with some olive oil, more salt and pepper, and more dried thyme. Toss that well, and then place the chicken right on top of your veggies. And we're going to put this in the oven for an hour and a half at 425 degrees. And I thought my chicken was going to cook a lot faster because it's quite a bit smaller. You see, I actually did tuck my wings under. I kind of forgot to show you guys that, but you want to try and tuck the wings under. The recipe also says to tie the legs up, but I didn't have any kitchen tie, and I really never do that, and I think it turns out fine, so personal opinion. And you want to cook that for that hour and a half at 425 until the juices run clear. You want to make sure that the temperature on the chicken is 165 degrees or more, and your vegetables should be roasted all the way through. And you can see how beautiful this is. It really did actually roast for the hour and a half. I was surprised, but it was so incredible, so flavorful. There's nothing like cooking sweet potatoes, or in the other recipe, the butternut squash, kind of in those chicken juices. It tastes amazing. I just served mine with super cheap microwave peas, and this was such a lovely fall meal, so inexpensive, and again, it feels gourmet. It just feels so warm, so amazing. Another thing that I have been seeing for 99 cents a pound or less is totes of apples. So I wanted to make these delicious cinnamon apple oatmeal muffins. I'm going to start by getting my ingredients ready. So I'm just going to melt 1 tablespoon of butter, peel my apple, and chop it. Yes, we're only using 1 apple. I was so excited. I'm like, yes, I found a great apple recipe. And then I look at it and I'm like, yep, we're going to use 1 apple. And as that is with so many fruit recipes, like when you have fruit in the summer, anytime when you have fruit and you're trying to bake with it because you have an excess, it's hard to use all of it. The only thing I think that like really uses a lot of it is like if you're making jam or jellies or sauces. Luckily, we are using the rest of our totes these days because I am dicing up apples or slicing up apples for my kids every single day. I'm like, this is the fruit we're having because it's in season. I feel like all the best muffins come with a crumble or a topping. So we're going to make the topping first by taking that 1 tablespoon of melted butter, mixing that with a 1/4 cup of quick oats, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. You can set that aside, and we'll start by mixing our dry ingredients: 1½ cups of quick cooking oats, 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, 1½ teaspoons of ground cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I will make sure to put this recipe in the description box below along with the other 2 recipes so that you can go look at them if you want to. I know there's a lot of ingredients there, but luckily these are all things that I already had on hand because I have a stocked pantry and there were not any specialty ingredients that I needed to go out and buy. Now in a separate bowl, I'm going to mix my wet ingredients: 1/2 cup of milk, 1/2 cup of unsweetened applesauce, 1/4 cup of vegetable oil, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 1 large egg. You want to mix that together and also mix your dry ingredients together if you haven't already done that, and then mix all of it together, and that's going to make your delicious muffin batter. And you want to also put your apples in, obviously, so fold those in once everything is really well mixed. And if you noticed, if you have a keen eye and you were really paying attention, you'd notice that I actually forgot to put the cinnamon in at the beginning in the dry ingredients. So I did add that at the end because I realized there was something had gone awry. Now this recipe makes 12 muffins. I did decide to use muffin cups for mine. You just want to fill them. It said 3/4 of the way full. It was almost like completely full. And then top them with that kind of streusely topping. And we're going to bake these at 400 degrees for about 15 minutes. These muffins turned out amazing. They're so good. They're not super sweet. They're so delicious with coffee. Personally, I don't love like a lot of sugar in something, and it's something that makes you kind of feel like a little bit healthier, a little bit better. It only has that half a cup of brown sugar, and that's it. So it is just fabulous as it is. The apples give it tons of flavor, and I love that little crunchy topping on there.
For this one, we're gonna make a butternut squash soup. And this is honestly, as usual, inspired by leftovers, right? So I've got, oh, this even has like a little seed still left in it. A quarter of a butternut squash. We had burgers the other night, and so we have half of a leftover tomato. This is like a really fresh tomato. Half of an onion. In my fridge, I have half a bag of carrots. We don't need all of these, but we can use some of them. I've got garlic. And this is all you need to make a couple of servings of butternut squash soup. You could make more, but you know what? I'm just gonna give my kids a break tonight. My husband and I will have this with some grilled cheese sandwiches. They can have grilled cheese if they want, but I know they're gonna want mac and cheese, which is totally fine. So I'm just gonna slice the butternut squash into cubes. I'm gonna take off the end of the onion and slice that into quarters. I'm gonna take off the end of the tomato, or you know, whatever you need to do there with the stem area. And then I'll just cut the garlic clove in half. And then for the carrots, we're just gonna sprinkle those on the pan. Just gonna put some olive oil on it, sprinkle it with salt and pepper and a little bit of thyme. And we're gonna roast this for 30 minutes in the oven. I'm gonna save half this garlic because it's just gonna be too much for 2 people. So since this is just 2 servings, you can put everything in here, but if you're gonna double or triple this recipe, you probably wanna use a larger, either a blender or an immersion blender. And then you could use either vegetable broth here, some bouillon. I just have chicken bouillon with a cup of water. And then we're just gonna blend it up. Smells delicious.
And yes, the kids went with mac and cheese. That was their choice. I served it with some veggies on the side and some fruit. So they had a little bit of everything, but sometimes you pick your battles. For the grilled cheese, I just buttered some sourdough bread and put some cheddar cheese slices with some mozzarella cheese over medium-low heat on a pan until crispy. And it tasted so good with this butternut squash soup. And I even had some croissants to serve alongside too, and the kids had those with their mac and cheese. Overall, this soup was incredible. I just put a little drizzle of olive oil and some red pepper flakes with some tiny little basil leaves to make it look pretty. It felt like a 5-star restaurant.
For this one, we're making a sweet potato crust quiche with spinach and feta. And this is gonna be a fun one for either the weekends, because it's gonna take a little bit longer, or you can make it and then make it ahead to eat during the week. So it's a perfect thing to kind of heat up either in your air fryer or your microwave in the morning. And this is a healthier option as well. So you just wanna peel and slice 1 sweet potato, and you have to think about kind of how thick you want that crust to be. So we're gonna kind of slice these into rounds that are, you know, I'm not really good at judging, 1/8 of an inch thick maybe. You want to try and be as even about it as possible though, so that you kind of cut them all the same thickness so that they'll cook evenly. Now I've preheated my oven to 375 degrees. Just gonna spray down my pie pan, and then we're gonna place the sweet potato rounds inside the pie pan, covering the bottom. And then on the sides, if you need to, you can actually kind of slice them in half to make like the perfect pie crust up the side. Doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of pile them on there, see how the bottom looks. And we're gonna put this in the oven at that 375 degrees for about 20 minutes. And I am gonna spray these with this olive oil spray first. So you can kind of make this your own. I'm using half of a red bell pepper because that's what I have. You can use tomato in it if you like. Whatever you think would taste good with your spinach. You could even do like sun-dried tomatoes. That sounds delicious. And then I have 1 small onion, and I'm dicing that up as well. And once these are diced, you're gonna put these into a pan over medium heat. And we're just gonna saute them up with a little bit of salt and pepper. While that's cooking up, I'm just getting my eggs started for it. I have 3 eggs in here, and then I'm gonna do about 2/3 of a cup of egg whites. You could also just use 6 eggs, so your choice on that. I'm gonna put a little salt and pepper in the eggs as well. We'll do about 1/3 a cup of milk. Also very easy to do like almond milk or soy milk in this. So now that these are kind of softened up, it's been about 5 minutes. I'm just gonna add some frozen spinach in. You could pre-cook this and kind of remove some of the water, but I'm lazy. You could also use about 5 to 8 ounces of fresh spinach. So when the 20 minutes is up, you wanna take the sweet potato crust out of the oven and like adjust anything you feel like you might need to adjust. And then we're just gonna pour this spinach mixture right in the bottom here. Top that with your egg mixture. And then you can use goat cheese or feta cheese. I prefer feta cheese. And then we're gonna put this back in the oven for about 40 minutes.
It's perfectly cooked. I'm so excited. It's gonna be delicious.
For this next one, we're gonna make maple cinnamon banana bread. You wanna start with 4 very ripe bananas. And a lot of times I'll just put mine in the freezer. I just put them in the fridge so that they would last a little longer. So you just wanna mash them well. It's never pretty, but it is what it is when you're cooking with bananas.
They need 1/4 cup of oil. I'm using melted coconut oil, but you could also use vegetable oil or melted butter, or you could even use applesauce in this.
1/4 cup of maple syrup, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and 2 eggs. And then just right on top of this, I'm gonna add 1.5 cups of flour, 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda, and 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. And then I'm just gonna kind of mix this on the top here as best I can. This is my like secret little way of trying to get out of putting the flour and the baking soda in like a separate container because I already have like enough dishes around this house. I don't need any more. And I found that when I do this, it always works out fine. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm sure serious bakers would be appalled. Then once you feel like it's well mixed, you can kind of mix everything together. Now you could add a cup of walnuts or some chocolate chips if you wanted into this. I'm not going to because it's just not gonna work for my family. I personally would love walnuts in it. I think it would taste really good, but I wanna make something that everybody will like, so we'll pass. Here I've got my bread loaf. I'm just gonna spray it down with some cooking spray. Do this in like an 8x8 pan too and make it more of squares if you don't have a loaf pan. And they're gonna bake this in the oven at 350 degrees for about an hour.
So here's our banana bread. I actually think I went a little bit over on it. I would cook it a little bit less time next time. So maybe like 45 minutes. You know what? It still looks really moist on the inside, so that's really what counts the most. I'm excited. This is going to be very good.
So tonight we're making chili, and this is my favorite classic chili recipe. Normally I would use regular onions, but I ran out, so as we do, I just use red because that's what I have. I'm making 2 times the recipe because we'll have it for lunch this week. And if I didn't have red onion, I would just use some onion powder as replacement. So we're just gonna saute this for 5 minutes until it's cooked down a bit. I was able to get this large package, 3 pounds of ground turkey for $9.99. So that's a really good price, $3.33 per pound. And I took a little over half, so almost 2 pounds. Because we're making double the recipe. The rest of it I'm gonna use tomorrow to make some shepherd's pie. Sometimes there's a benefit to getting like a larger package. Just breaking it up into multiple meals. Kind of like using a rotisserie chicken for more than 1 meal. It kind of works the same way. So I'm just gonna cook this down until it's browned and then we'll drain out the fat. I think because this is the 97.3 turkey, there's really not a lot of fat in it, so I'm just gonna leave it.
We're gonna put our seasonings in. 5 tablespoons of chili powder. Which will pretty much be the rest of this, which is fine. 4 tablespoons of cumin. A tablespoon of salt. 2 tablespoons of sugar. And about a teaspoon of black pepper. And you might think I'm crazy for the way I put the seasonings in, but we just measure with our heart. But that is pretty accurate because I cook a lot, so I know just about how much everything is. Plus, chili only tastes better when you season it a little bit more. And then I need about 4 tablespoons of tomato paste, and I almost opened a new container when I remembered that I had these frozen ones. So I always take my jars, and you usually only need like a tablespoon or 2. And then I make them into I put them in like a bag like this, make them into almost like about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoon logs. And that way, when you have a recipe that calls for a couple tablespoons, you're pretty much all set. And it defrosts in a pan like this very quickly. So it's not a big deal that it's just straight out of the freezer. And I can still save the rest of this. All right, it's pretty much cooked down now. I'm gonna add in my tomato sauce. I have 2 8-ounce cans. I even opened one up the other day just to make a little tortilla pizza. Not a big deal if we're short on a little bit. I've got some beef bone broth. We're gonna need 3 cups of this. If you have bouillon, that's fine too. And I've even used either just like water and salt or chicken bouillon, something like that. That's fine too. Then I've got 2 cans of drained and rinsed kidney beans. Normally, my original recipe calls for 2 cans of diced petite kidney beans, but I forgot to buy them and I don't have any. So we're just gonna use this. It's kind of like a garden vegetable pasta sauce. I think that'll be just fine. And since it's 2 cans, I'm kind of just testing out. It's actually this whole jar should be about right. So hopefully that'll give me the flavor that I'm looking for. You can always kind of cover up any flavors in chili just by adding more chili powder. But see, I really like this chili because it's already quite thick. I love kidney beans in my chili. We're gonna bring this up to a simmer and cook it over low heat for 25 minutes.
And when it's done, you can just serve it with your favorite toppings. For my kids, I definitely put like a lot of Greek yogurt on top because, hey, it's some extra protein, but also it kind of like milds down. Is that a word? It makes the flavor a little bit more mild for them. And they'll pretty much eat anything that either has like sour cream or Greek yogurt on it. I had mine with some cheese and cilantro, but you could also do some avocado. You could do some jalapenos or some sriracha to make it spicier because it's really not a spicy chili. So it's just what you like.
5 out of 5.
You like it?
Yeah.
What do you put in yours?
Sriracha.
You like it too, Benny?
Yeah.
What do you give it?
Bye.
A Benny?
No, a bite.
A 5?
No, bite.
A bite?
Yeah.
What number out of 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5?
6.
Oh, 6. Even better. Okay, so we're gonna make a sweet potato breakfast hash. I was so excited this morning when I woke up and I just like needed a sweatshirt. It's nice cool weather. It's gonna get hot later in the week, but I'm just gonna soak in all of the sweatshirt weather that I can. We're gonna start by peeling and dicing 2 sweet potatoes. And I'm also gonna dice up 1 onion. Place those in a bowl. We're gonna toss that with a tablespoon of olive oil.
Unfortunately, my camera was not recording at this time, but I'm still going to walk you through it.
A teaspoon of chili powder, a teaspoon of smoked paprika, a half a teaspoon of cumin, half a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and then I'm dicing up this sweet potato chicken sausage. It's already fully cooked, but it's gonna warm up and go really well with our sweet potato. And we're just gonna mix all of that together and put it in the bottom of a 9x13 pan. And we're baking that at 425 degrees for 30 minutes. Then you wanna pull that out of the oven and we're gonna add in, you can do like 8 to 10 eggs. I think I'm just gonna do 8 here. And we're gonna cook this for an additional 10 to 15 minutes. It's gonna depend on your oven, it's gonna depend on how you like your eggs. I like mine a little bit runnier. If you want them fully cooked through, you're gonna go a little bit longer.
And this came out absolutely amazing. I mean, it's such an amazing fall meal. You could also alternatively cook up like some pork sausage, cook that, and then put that in there if you don't want to use the chicken apple sausage. I served mine in bowls. We liked it with a little bit of ketchup, and it was delicious. So next we have a Starbucks pumpkin cream cheese muffin copycat. I don't know about you, but like muffins, I have to have them in the fall, the pumpkin muffin. So why not make it at home? You want to start with a cup and a half of flour and 3/4 cup of sugar. Add to that 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, a half a teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. You don't use that that often, but it really adds a lot of flavor, so it's worth having around. And just give that a mix. You want to mix everything together so that's well incorporated. And then in a separate bowl, you want to mix together your wet ingredients. So a teaspoon of vanilla and then a half a cup of melted butter. You want to make sure that's unsalted, but also cooled down. You don't want it to be hot because we're going to add an egg here. And if you were to add an egg to hot butter, basically cook it and it would just not be good. And then you want a cup and a half of pumpkin puree. And you want to make sure that that's the puree and not like the pumpkin pie can. And so just 100% pumpkin. It uses like everything but about 1/4 cup of pumpkin, which for me was perfect because I ended up making a pumpkin pie overnight oats, which was a nice breakfast. So don't be worried that there's like a little bit extra. You can make something with it and it's like a nice little surprise. And then you want to take everything all mixed together and mix those wet ingredients with the dry ingredients. And it's going to create kind of a thick batter, but that's okay. That's why these muffins are so moist and delicious. And then to a 12 muffin tin, you want to put them in evenly. It ended up being about 2 tablespoons per cup. You can do a greased muffin tin if you like, or you can use the liners like I did. I find that using a cookie scoop is perfect for something like this. I had a 1.5 tablespoons one, so I had to go back through and kind of put like a half into each to make it even. But if you had a 2 tablespoon cookie scoop, that would be perfect. And then we're going to make the cream cheese filling. I have 4 ounces of softened cream cheese here, a teaspoon of all-purpose flour, 3 tablespoons of sugar, half a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 1 teaspoon of milk. I used coconut milk, but you could use regular almond, whatever you have. And then you just want to use a hand mixer to mix this. You could also do this in a stand mixer. It's just a little bit of like a small portion to do it, to take out your full stand mixer for, but it's your choice in how you do it. You could probably even do this in a food processor too. And then I just went through and I kind of flattened out the muffins because they were kind of like lumpy and uneven, and when I wanted them to cook more evenly. And then I took all of that cream cheese filling and I just put it into a little baggie and cut the end off. But you could also use a piping bag with a piping tip. If you had like a plastic tip, it might be able to go in there a little bit better, because what we're doing here is just pushing the bag like directly into the muffin so it actually goes inside of it. And you'll see later, like it cooked perfectly, like it was half cream cheese, half muffin. So you really want to not put it on top, but push it inside. You want to bake these at 350 degrees for about 18 minutes. You want to make sure that they have that kind of golden look, but not too overdone. So you could check them at like 16, depending on your oven, and just let them go until they look just like this. And you want to also make sure that a toothpick like comes out clean when you put it inside of them. But these were cooked perfectly and they go amazing with coffee, and they're just such a special treat and like pennies on the dollar compared to Starbucks.
So today we're making white chicken chili, and I'm actually on a pantry challenge, and that means that I'm not going to the grocery store because we're kind of in between vacations here. Somehow I booked a vacation that was like back to back with another vacation, which is, I mean, I feel grateful, but so we were away in Maine. We came back from an Airbnb. We had a bunch of food, so I was like, let's eat through this food, and then we leave on Saturday. So we're here for 6 nights. To go to Florida to go to Universal Studios with the kids. So I was like, you know what, let's just not shop at all. We're not gonna shop at all. So I had a big pack of chicken left over in the freezer from the trip because we ended up not using it. I took 4 of the chicken breasts out yesterday, and we made chicken piccata. It was delicious. And today I have 2 chicken breasts left, and this is a great way to utilize chicken. Really any type of soup is always gonna be a great way to use chicken. And like, would this be enough if I was just serving chicken to my family of 5? Probably not. But if you add it in with some beans and everything else, you're gonna end up with a really hearty and delicious soup. So I'm just cutting up an onion. And if I had fresh garlic, I would do like 3 cloves of fresh garlic too. But I don't have fresh garlic. So you put the 2 chicken breasts in the bottom of the of the slow cooker and you top it with seasonings, we're gonna end up with about a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of black pepper, teaspoon of cumin, a half a teaspoon of chili powder, and 3/4 teaspoon of oregano. And then if I had fresh minced garlic, I would do like 3 cloves, but I don't. So we're just gonna go in generously here with some garlic powder. And I also put in my yellow onion at the beginning. So if you don't have fresh onion, that's gonna be totally fine. Just do like a tablespoon of onion powder. I'm gonna give it plenty of flavor. And then I'm gonna add in either 3 cups of chicken broth, or I have chicken bouillon here, so just add that right in. It's a very inexpensive alternative. This soup ends up being super cheap. So I'm just using 1 can of drained, these are cannellini beans. We can use Great Northern. I'm not sure if they're exactly the same, but you can use 2 cans of beans too. I just had 1, so you can definitely add more if you want to. And then ideally you have some fresh cilantro, so just a handful of chopped fresh cilantro. It's already noon here. We've got an open house at the kids' school tonight, so I'm just gonna give this a little stir and we will cook this on high for 4 hours. All right, it's actually been about 3 hours, but I think we're in good shape. And I have a little over 4 ounces, which is like what's left of a cream cheese block here. And you don't really need this much, but I never ran into a situation where I had too much cream cheese. So, and then I cut it into 4 pieces to make it easier. And I'm just gonna take these 2, ooh, steamy. I'm gonna add in you do a 1/4 cup of like heavy cream, milk, half and half, whatever you got. I'm just gonna kind of mix it as I use these forks to shred the chicken. And it should just kind of melt right in there. So this ended up shredding up pretty good and everything got mixed in here pretty well. And I'm not quite ready to eat yet, but I can keep shredding this chicken and see how there's some big pieces of cream cheese. But look how creamy, and it's gonna be super yummy. And then you can just serve this in a bowl. Oh, thank you. Ben thinks I should use these. Thank you, Ben. You say thank you?
Thank you. Mama was these.
Okay, I'm gonna use these because I have to use them to.
Yes, that's hot.
Yeah, it's hot. I know. Be careful. So you can serve it with sour cream.
Mama, I do this one.
Oh, thank you.
Mama.
Serve it in a bowl with sour cream, some diced up avocado, cilantro. You could do like a squeeze of lime in it. You could even do, we have some leftover tortilla chips, so I'm just gonna like serve it with some chips on the side. You could do some fresh jalapenos. It's gonna be delicious.
Make it up.
For this one, we're making maple pecan cookies. And I never thought I was going to be like a signature fall cookie person because I always bake cookies for Christmas. But now these are going to be on the menu every September. They are truly delicious and craveable. So you want to start with 2.5 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and a half a teaspoon of ground nutmeg. So those are all your dry ingredients. Go ahead and mix those until they're well incorporated. And then in the bottom of a stand mixer, you want to put a half a cup of unsalted room temperature butter, 1 cup of light brown sugar, a half a cup of maple sugar, which I love because it's like a healthier option. Plus it just gives these cookies so much flavor. It is so delicious. And 1 egg. And then once that's well mixed, you want to start slowly adding in the dry ingredients. And once those are all incorporated in there, you can add 1.5 cups of chopped pecans. So this recipe bakes about 18 cookies. So you want to take a tablespoon and a half cookie scoop and place your cookies about 2 inches apart on a lined baking sheet. And you're going to bake these at 350 degrees for about 14 minutes. You can always check them a little bit before. You obviously don't want them to go over. The first time that I did this, they came out and they were like almost like, they reminded me like a scoop of ice cream because they were so puffed up on the top. So in the future, I ended up just pushing kind of down the tops. I mean, they tasted amazing. They're so good. But I ended up pushing the tops down a little bit so that it made more of like a flatter cookie. You can do whatever you want, and they were perfect.
Today we're gonna make a skillet gnocchi with some Italian sausage and spinach. This is like a perfect hearty fall meal. All right, so the gnocchi, I have some water boiling. As soon as that's boiling, we're gonna put it in and just follow the instructions on here. It's literally 2 minutes, so it takes no time. We're gonna need one diced or minced onion, one diced onion, and 2 cloves of minced garlic. So you can use any type of sausage for this. I happen to have some turkey sausage. It's Italian turkey sausage I got on sale. You could even use like some of the pre-cooked chicken sausage or something. We're gonna slice it up. I'm not too worried about like putting it on the same thing because we're gonna cook all this stuff together anyway. But we do need to cook these fully before we add the gnocchi and everything. But if you have pre-cooked, that's fine too. So over medium-high heat, you want to add a couple tablespoons of butter. I'm just going to add my uncooked sausage here because we're going to cook that up. I'm going to cook it at the same time as the onions. We're just going to put that all in here. And then as I was doing this, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to break these into smaller pieces so that they're more like bite-sized. So that's up to you whether you want like the bigger ones, but I also figured we're kind of at the end of cooking and I'll just speed the process along a little bit. So this just be a reminder to everybody, like you don't just need to blindly do what you initially plan to do. Like if you see an opportunity to make things better for yourself, easier for the person who's eating it, tastier, like take the opportunity. If you see a recipe that I make and you're like, you know what? I think it would taste better with raspberries. Not this one. This one will not taste better with raspberries, but you know what I mean? Do it! Like, add it! Don't just go with, you know, the status quo. Alright, it's gonna be time to add our gnocchi here. Literally just 2 minutes on this, so not long. We did also salt this pot of water, so you're gonna want that nice and salty. I've got this cool little thing, so when this is ready, we're literally just gonna scoop it out. I'm just gonna break it up. I'm just gonna add in the garlic now, just for a second here. If you had onion powder and garlic powder, now would be the time to add it. Just gonna get it fragrant. You can also add some hot pepper flake to this if you want. I'm gonna serve it to my kids, so I'm not gonna, but we will definitely be offering it at the table with some Parmesan cheese. I'm gonna do about a half, probably a third a cup of that, this is bone broth, but this is just gonna get the brown bits off the bottom and really get that flavor. It's called deglazing the pan. Just a little more. So you do want to take that wooden spoon, or depending what type of pan you're using, maybe a plastic, but I like the wooden spoon and kind of get those crusties off the bottom because that's where all the flavors developed. And so here you could use kale as well. I'd want to like chop it up and probably massage it, but I'm gonna use 2 to 3 cups of spinach and just wilt that down in here. And the gnocchi we're just gonna place right in here. I like using this method because it kind of keeps some of that water in, and that pasta water is gonna be a little starchy and it's gonna really meld these gnocchis with the flavor of that sausage and that chicken broth and the garlic and the onion. So it's really basic. Like we didn't put any seasonings in here. Like I said, if you feel like that's not okay, add them. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna give this a little taste, and I'm just gonna add salt and pepper to taste. And then we're gonna serve it with some Parmesan cheese and some red pepper flake. And I mean, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous, right? So I just sprinkled some parsley on here. I'm gonna sprinkle some Parmesan cheese. All right, so for this one, we're making an apple onion grilled cheese. And this can be very easily be a vegetarian recipe, but I do have some prosciutto, so I'm gonna add that to mine as a little something extra. I'm just gonna make one, but this is very inexpensive to make as much as you like. I have some sourdough bread here, but you can use any type of bread that you want, and apples. So very few ingredients, and we're gonna make something that's super fall flavored, amazing.
By slicing your onion, and you just want to slice it into rounds versus like chopping it up into pieces. And then I've got a tablespoon of butter in a pan over medium heat. We're gonna add in the onion to that, cook it down for like 5 minutes. You can add in some apple cider if you want, or like something sweet. I don't have any, so I'm not gonna do it. I don't wanna buy apple cider just for the recipe necessarily. I can make a delicious caramelized onion I'm gonna keep cooking for another 5 minutes. You can add water in there, and that will help that onion to cook down a little bit faster versus like adding the apple cider. You could even do some chicken broth, that works as well. And once that onion is really caramelized, then it's pretty much ready. I'm just gonna sprinkle on a tiny bit, like a 1/4 teaspoon, maybe even less, of sage and thyme, and then a little bit of crushed red pepper flakes, and that's your choice whether you wanna have like a little spicy in that too. And then I have my sliced up apple. You wanna make sure that you slice that super thin. And if you're gonna do prosciutto, this is where you remove the onions, and then we're gonna place the prosciutto in the bottom of the pan and kind of crisp it up. While that's crisping, you can slice your bread, or maybe you already have sliced bread. I'm gonna butter both sides of the bread, like the back sides. So each slice is gonna have half of it buttered. And then again, you wanna, in a pan over medium heat, we're gonna add cheddar cheese. You can add as much or as little as you want. I have some block cheese, so I just put it into slices. And then the apple, the prosciutto, and those caramelized onions. And you wanna cook it open face for probably 3 to 5 minutes. You want it to crisp up on the other side. You can close it up. That'll help to kind of like get it to steam together a little bit more. I like to put a little bit of cheese on both sides so that it kind of has like that cheese to keep it together. And then once it's crispy on both sides, your cheese is melted, everything's warmed through. I mean, that's it. That is an incredible fall meal. You could even serve this with like some tomato soup or some chicken noodle or something. I just had mine as it was. I felt like a goddess. It's truly, truly incredible. All right, so for this one, we're gonna make a coconut pumpkin lime curry chickpea. So again, very low cost because we're just gonna use some canned chickpeas. We've got some fresh onion. I'm gonna mince that up. You can very easily double this recipe. I'm just gonna make a couple of servings. I have 1 jalapeno. We're gonna seed that. You could always use pickled jalapeno. That would be fine. Or you can even just add some like hot pepper flakes to it if you don't have anything spicy, or if you don't like spicy, then you don't wanna put it in. And then we're just gonna mince 4 cloves of garlic. Again, if you don't have fresh garlic, you can always use garlic powder. So you just wanna heat a couple of tablespoons of oil in a large skillet over medium heat. We're gonna stir in that onion and jalapeno, and then just cook until it's golden on the edges. It's gonna be about 8 minutes. Once that onion is cooked down, you wanna add in the ginger and garlic just for about a minute. You're gonna stir it up, and it's gonna basically bring out all the flavors and all the smells. And then you wanna stir in 1.5 teaspoons of gram masala. That's like an Indian spice that I've had for years. Honestly, spices last to like forever. Great investment because it adds a ton of flavor. A teaspoon of cumin and 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric. Again, we're just gonna cook that up really, really quick. It's just gonna like kind of like bloom the flavors. You wanna stir in 1 can of chickpeas drained, 1/2 can of coconut milk. Again, it's very easy to double this, so you just use 2 cans of chickpeas and a full cup of coconut milk.
1 cup of pureed pumpkin.
1/4 cup of water, and just a sprinkling of salt, probably about a teaspoon. And you wanna bring that to a simmer. And once it comes up to that simmer, we're gonna simmer it for 10 minutes and kind of stir it, and all those flavors are gonna come out in this, and it's really just incredible. So once it's done, after that 10 minutes is up, I'm gonna add in a tablespoon or so of fresh lime juice, or you could use like the squeeze bottle of lime juice. And you can add some cilantro to it too if you have some fresh. I don't have any fresh cilantro today, so I'm just not adding it. And then just give it a taste. You can adjust the seasonings, like add some salt if you need to. This is a seriously incredible dish. And then you just wanna serve it over some rice. I like to take my rice, mix it with half cauliflower rice, because then I get some more veggies in. And I can tell when I have plain cauliflower rice. I can't tell when I have rice mixed with cauliflower rice. It's just a great way to get extra veggies in it, and it's really inexpensive. So that's what I've done here. And this is really, seriously incredible dish. So many fall flavors. Like I love the pumpkin in it. I love the curry. It's just like the taste of the season. And it's like I mean, it cost me less than $5 to make, so it couldn't be
Next recipe, we're going to use the Dutch oven, which I was so excited to get a new Dutch oven because I desperately needed one, and make sweet potato turkey chili. You can see I made a little bit of cornbread on the side and had that with a pumpkin head. Comment below if you're also like, gotta have the pumpkin head in the fall because it's so good. You want to start off with 1 diced onion and either 1 really large sweet potato, because I know those exist in many places, or 2 medium to small sweet potatoes, so I just used 2. And then I have 3 cloves of garlic minced. That's pretty much all the chopping that we're going to do for today, so that's out of the way. Everything else we're just going to put right in the pan, and it's going to be so delicious. This is such a nice fall meal. I absolutely love turkey sweet potato chili in the fall. It's something completely different, and I always add a secret ingredient to mine, so don't forget to stick around because it's not your traditional chili. Start off by adding a couple tablespoons of oil over medium heat in your Dutch oven or whatever pan or pot you want to use. Cook that down for about 5 minutes. Then you want to add in about 1 pound of ground turkey, or you can use ground beef here. Or if you want to go vegetarian, you don't even need to use meat at all. We'll just double up on the beans. Any of these items can make this chili extremely inexpensive. I was able to find ground beef and ground turkey on sale in my area for $2.77 again, so I felt like that was a huge win. Sometimes I see like the big logs of ground beef on sale at Aldi for like $2.45. So whatever your sale item is, go ahead and grab that, and you can just use that from your freezer, especially if you defrost it, or go ahead and use beans because those are going to be the least expensive option that there is. You just want to cook your meat until it's no longer pink. Then you're going to add 2 tablespoons of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, 1 teaspoon of paprika, although I use smoked paprika because everything is better with smoked paprika. And if you'd like, you can add a half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, but I did not do that because that is a no-go in my family. Give that a nice stir, make sure that everything is coated, and then we're going to add those diced sweet potatoes, 1 cup of chicken broth, or I'm using chicken bouillon, so just 1 cup of water and 1 teaspoon of chicken bouillon, 1 can of fire rice roasted diced tomatoes, or if you don't have those, I just used regular diced tomatoes, that was still good, and 1 can of drained kidney beans. This is where if you're not going to use the meat, go ahead and add whatever beans you like. I think black beans would be absolutely delicious in this as well. And I almost forgot about my secret ingredient, a good dash of cinnamon. Cinnamon with the sweet potatoes and the chili is so incredible, and it does a lot for flavor, and you're not going to feel like it's like a sweet dish at all. It is so delicious. Just want to stir everything really good, and we're going to bring it up to a boil. Once it's at a boil, you want to lower the heat and then put the cover on kind of a jar and let it cook for 15 to 25 minutes, and that's going to depend on how thick or big you cut the sweet potato pieces. So you just want to check them. Once they're softened, your chili is done. I served this for the first regular season football game of the season. I know I said season twice, I don't know. I put sour cream on mine, some cheddar cheese. Like I said, I had a pumpkin head. I had some cilantro. You can put avocado on this, whatever you like.
The next recipe is a mashed sweet potato recipe. I'm just starting off by cooking the sweet potatoes in the Instant Pot. It is honestly so easy. You just pop the potatoes into the Instant Pot with 1 cup of water. Then you're just going to cook them for 15 minutes on high pressure, and then let it release on regular steam release for 10 minutes. Your result is perfectly cooked sweet potatoes. I actually just took these out, let them cool off, and put them in the fridge overnight until it was time for me to make my casserole. When you take them out of the fridge, it's amazingly easy to just peel the skins right off, no problem. Now I'm just using a hand masher to mash these up, and I'm really making up my recipe as I go here. What tastes good in sweet potatoes? I've got about 2 tablespoons of unsweetened almond milk, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and 2 tablespoons of melted butter. If you wanted to make these vegan, you could definitely use a vegan butter and they would turn out just fine. I'm just going to place the mashed potatoes into this little casserole dish, and then I have these maple toasted pecans. If you don't have these type of pecans, you could just use plain pecans, or you could put them with some brown sugar or roast them up. I'm just going to chop these up
taste them. They're so good. Just make sure it would taste right, and place them on top of my casserole. This casserole just needs to be cooked in the oven at 350 for about 20 minutes for a perfectly warm sweet potato that is absolutely stunning. It is a favorite fall recipe of mine from now on.
Next up, we're making a German cabbage in the Instant Pot. This is truly delicious, and even if you're not a cabbage fan, this will make you change your mind.
So I had some red cabbage. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? I'm thinking it would taste good with apples. So I found this recipe. It includes an apple, some onion, brown sugar, some apple cider vinegar, and a little bit of butter. So we've got 2 tablespoons of butter in our Instant Pot, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, and then I'm just going to chop the rest of this head of cabbage very thinly. Honestly, my husband basically declared that he hates cabbage and was horrified that I was making this meal. But once I cooked it, not only was it so easy, he absolutely loved it and he wants me to make it again. He was so shocked and surprised that you could make cabbage like this. So I'm just going to peel my apple and then actually grate it. So there's not really any chunks of apple in this recipe, but it does have that nice sweet flavor to it, and you can really tell that the apple's in there. If I was doing like a larger recipe, I might use my food processor, but in this case, the grater works just fine for the single apple. Really doesn't make as much as I thought it did, but it really makes an impact with the taste. My favorite thing about this recipe is that it's set and forget. I'm literally going to take this onion and just grate up 2 tablespoons of it. It's a very small amount. I'm just going to set the Instant Pot for high for 3 minutes once everything is in there, and then once it's gone off, I'm going to quick release for about 5, and that's it. It's so fast and so amazing.
2 things I love about these pumpkin pancakes: no egg, and they don't taste like those like crazy pumpkin flavored stuff. They're just pumpkin-y enough, just enough flavor, and they're so simple. So we're going to start off with 1 2/3 cup of pancake mix. To that, you want to add a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. If you have it, you can do pumpkin pie spice, but I think that would be what makes it kind of more of that like pumpkin pie-y flavor. I actually just used a half a teaspoon of nutmeg and left it at that. Then you're going to need a half a cup of pumpkin puree, 2 cups of milk, and a 1/4 cup of oil. And I am considering this a pantry meal because I always keep shelf-stable milk on hand in my pantry, which I recommend you do too. It's a super easy way to be able to have milk when you need it. Now the batter did feel a little bit thin to me, so I did add another 1/3 cup of pancake mix to this, and mine came out nice and fluffy, so it might be closer to 2 cups. I know that kind of varies depending on the temperature and climate that you live in, so kind of feel it out, make it sure that it feels right for you. And then I am using butter, but you can use cooking spray, you can use Crisco, you can use oil, whatever you want to cook up these pancakes. I should have done them in a griddle, but I had them on a pan because my griddle broke a while ago and it's on the list, guys. But hey, here we are cooking some delicious pancakes in a pan, you know, the usual way that you cook pancakes. I don't know if there's anything fancy about this. I like to cook mine over more of like a medium-low heat versus a higher heat because I feel like they don't cook like too fast on the outside and not enough on the inside, right? You want to make sure they cook all the way through without burning on the outside. And like I said, nice and light and fluffy and delicious. You would never know that these didn't have any egg in them or anything, and they are just amazing. Ben absolutely loved them. Tommy loved them, so they are a win in our house. And it made a bunch of them. I like to freeze these and then just heat them up in the microwave like 30 seconds or pop them in the toaster, and they are a perfect snack or breakfast.
One of my son's favorite thing in the fall is pumpkin flavored items, including the pumpkin bread from Starbucks. I decided I'm going to make this at home. You just want to start with 1 15-ounce can of solid packed pumpkin, not the pumpkin pie mix, just the 100% pumpkin. Then to that, you add 1 cup of honey, 3/4 cup of canola oil or vegetable oil, and 2/3 cup of water. Then you want to crack in 4 large eggs and 1 1/2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, which I added in later because sometimes I do things in the wrong order. And then you just want to whisk everything together until it is well blended. Oh, look, there's the vanilla. Now I also added in 2 cups of sugar and gave that a stir.
Now, I am not a baker, like a great baker, so I don't necessarily follow the instructions like I probably should, and I'm sure that chefs from around the world hate this, but I added 2 teaspoons of baking soda right to my wet mixture and then mixed that in. Then I added 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, a half a teaspoon of ground ginger, and a teaspoon of salt, and then just gave that a good mix. Now, I know you're supposed to like add all of that to the flour mixture in a separate bowl and then mix that in, but I hate using extra dishes, so I always do it this way and it turns out fine. So, you know, whatever, to each their own, right? You can totally use a separate bowl and mix everything together if that's the way you want to do it and you find that it works out better. And then we also want to add in 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour. And that is kind of going to be the final step. Once you mix all this together, you have your pumpkin bread batter, and you just want to grease 2 9x5-inch loaf pans. Now, I had 1 2-pound loaf pan, and then I didn't have a second loaf pan, so I think my loaf pan was like a little bit bigger than was originally anticipated, but not big enough to make just like one huge thing of bread. So I actually made 12 muffins and 1 loaf of bread, which worked out great, and it was like really fun because like the kids are like, ooh, muffins, and my Dan and I are more like, oh, the bread. So, you know, whatever style that you like it in, just know that the muffins cook a lot faster than the bread will because they're just not as thick. You want to bake the bread at 350 degrees for 60 to 70 minutes, but for the muffins, those were done in about 25. So just make sure to start checking them around 20 minutes. And then even in this bread loaf, I think this was about 60 minutes in, I did check my bread, and you can see it's golden and beautiful, and it does look really good, but it's still a little jiggly, like it's not all the way set in the middle. So I just cooked it for another 10 to 15 minutes. So you just want to have to check that as you're going along. And I forgot to mention, the original recipe has you add pepitas or pumpkin seeds right over the top. Now, my kid's not a huge fan of seeds, so I didn't add any, and I just didn't even have any on hand, so I don't want to go out and buy any. You can see we grabbed some muffins right away. They were so good. But it's so fun to have this fall bread and make something that is, oh my God, so much cheaper than Starbucks, and you have an entire loaf of it. So I'm a huge fan. It was so good, especially with a delicious cup of coffee. Oh my, this one is delicious. We are doing just a 2-ingredient casserole for breakfast here, and it is too easy not to share. Just want 1 can of store-bought cinnamon rolls and 1 can of apple pie filling, or in my case, I grabbed these fried apples with cinnamon from Aldi, both super inexpensive. So this also makes this casserole come in at under $5. Cut your cinnamon rolls into quarters and then add the entire jar of apple pie filling, or in my case, the fried apples. Those fried apples are absolutely fabulous, but if you can't find them, apple pie filling is also going to be delicious. Pour that into a greased 8x8 baking dish. This recipe is also super easy to double or triple, so if you have more people, just throw in more cans and you're going to be all set. You want to bake this at 400 degrees for about 12 minutes, but go ahead and check it. I think every oven is different, especially depending on kind of the temperature in your kitchen, how cold your cinnamon rolls were when you first put them in, and how many apples you have in there. Look at that bubbling. Is your mouth watering? And then you actually get another ingredient, which is kind of a freebie because it comes in the cinnamon rolls already. Go ahead and pour that delicious icing right over the top, and look how fabulous that is and how simple it was. This is perfect for a Thanksgiving or a Christmas morning where you don't want to do a ton of work, but you want to have something super special. I also think if you had like peach pie filling or pear pie filling, both of those things would taste delicious in this. Now I'm going to make an old-fashioned apple crisp. I truly believe it isn't fall without apple crisp. Now this video was recorded a couple years ago when I was pregnant, so no, I'm not pregnant again. This is just the last time that I recorded an apple crisp, but it's too good not to share. The first thing this recipe calls for is 6 golden delicious apples, which I have already chopped up. And then I am adding 2 tablespoons of sugar and 1 1/3 teaspoons of cinnamon. And then you just want to mix that up really well and let those apples sit. In the meantime, I'm mixing 3/4 a cup of flour with 3/4 a cup of instant oats. To that, you want to add 1 cup of packed light brown sugar. Now I'm going to take a 1/2 cup of cold unsalted butter and dice it up into little squares, and then I'm going to add that into my oat mixture, and I'm going to take a fork to kind of mash it around, and I did end up using my hands just to mix everything together. If you have a pastry cutter, that is exactly what you want to be using here. For some reason, I realized I don't own a pastry cutter, so I think it's about time I get one. But you just want to make sure that you mix it together really well. You don't want to go too crazy with your hands, especially because the butter is supposed to be very cold, and that's what helps everything mix together well. You definitely don't want to microwave the butter or bring it out early because the cold butter is what helps keep this topping really crispy. And you definitely want a nice crispy apple crisp topping. Now pour your sliced apples into a 9x13 baking pan, and then you're going to top it with the apple crisp topping. Now you just want to bake this in the oven at 350 degrees for 40 to 50 minutes. I personally want to make sure that my apples are fully cooked and everything is like bubbling. So I usually do about 50 minutes, but it's going to depend on your oven. Now I personally recommend you serve this piping hot with a nice scoop of vanilla ice cream on top, but you can use whipped cream or whatever you like as well. Now I know we already made the Starbucks pumpkin bread, but I cannot have a fall video without these 2-ingredient pumpkin muffins. It is so simple. All you're gonna need is 1 package of Betty Crocker spice cake, and you'll mix that with 1 can of 100% pure pumpkin. Now when you're mixing this, the mixture is definitely thick. Like it makes a very thick batter, and that is what you want. Don't add any water to it or anything like that. The pumpkin itself is what's gonna make these so moist and amazing. So you don't want to mess with that, I guess. Just know that it will come out as a thick mixture. And then you just want to add it to 12 muffin cups. So 1 container of spice cake mix and pure pumpkin will equal 12 muffins. And then you're going to want to cook these at 375 degrees for 18 to 20 minutes. And here you can see kind of how thick that batter is. You do kind of need to like plop it in there. It's not just going to pour into the muffin tins. And here are the muffins when they are finished to come out of the oven. You can see that they puff right up. They fill out your whole muffin liner. All right, the next few recipes come from a $35 fall meal plan. You can see some of the stuff that I purchased here. I'm not going to get into the details of it in this video because I just wanted to share the recipes because they're honestly so quintessential fall and so delicious. But I am going to link the link to the video as well as to the blog that I wrote on this that has like the complete grocery list and all of the recipes and meal plan for this down in the description box for you so that you can follow this if you would like. And so that's why when you're watching them, I'm saying like use a piece of this and a piece of that. It's because it's from one of those recipes from the meal plan. We have pumpkin soup as the first meal. You want to start by dicing 1/2 of one of our onions. Then you want to heat about 3 tablespoons of butter in a large pot and add in those onions. If you don't have butter, that's totally fine. You could use like oil or olive oil, anything that you have that's a fat. Give that a good stir and cook those down for a little bit. And then you're going to add in about a tablespoon sprinkle of the baking mix. And the reason for this is we're going to kind of create a roux to make it a little bit thicker. If we had heavy cream, we wouldn't need to do this. So I'm just doing this as kind of a thickening agent because we're going to be using milk instead of cream in this dish. Then we're going to put in some spices. If you have fresh garlic, you can use that, but I'm using a teaspoon of garlic powder, a tablespoon of light brown sugar, a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and a 1/4 teaspoon of white pepper, and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Just want to make sure that all of that is mixed together and kind of coats those onions. Then we're going to add in 1 15-ounce can of pumpkin puree. So I have my really large can, so I'm just using about 1/2 of that. And then I'm just adding in 3 cups of water. You could definitely use the chicken broth or if you had vegetable broth or something like that here. I didn't find that it was super necessary to use it in this soup, and I wanted to save it for some other things, so I decided just to use the water, and that was just fine. You also want to add in a teaspoon of salt and then bring it up to a boil and then reduce the heat to low and simmer for 20 minutes. Then you want to slowly stir in a 1/2 cup of milk, then let the soup cool for a few minutes and remove it from the heat. And then you can either transfer the soup to a blender or you can use an immersion blender, which is what I have, and you can puree that until smooth. So basically want to make sure that all of those onions and everything gets pureed right into the soup. So whatever way you want to do that, you could use like a NutriBullet, you could use a full-on blender, you could even use a food processor, or like I'm using an immersion blender, which I absolutely love, and I do have one down in my Amazon store in the description box if you're interested in getting one. This is amazing for soups. And that is it. This is about 5 servings, so this is the perfect for one night for my family, so not like a multiple day meal, but so belly warming and so delicious with those biscuits. Next up, we're making pumpkin pancakes, which is our breakfast recipe for the week. I'm doubling this recipe, so we're using 4 cups of the baking mix, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, 4 teaspoons of sugar, and 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. And if you don't have pumpkin pie seasoning, I think it's really just a mix of cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves. And I will make sure to put a recipe for that down in the description box for you. Having a solid spice cabinet is really what helps make these challenges happen. So I always recommend buying at least 1 spice at the store each week if you're trying to ramp that up. Then you want to add 4 tablespoons of melted butter, 1.5 cups of milk, and 4 eggs. Then you want to stir that until most of the lumps come out. And then we're just going to make pancakes the regular old way that you love to make pancakes. I like to use butter as my fat for them. And if I had a griddle, I would love to use that. I, for some reason, don't have one. So I just torture myself by cooking them in a regular pan. But you know what? Use what you have. It's gonna work, it's gonna be fine. And these turned out absolutely amazing. I always say when you're cooking pancakes, you kind of want to wait for those little tunnels to show up before you flip them, and that's what's gonna help give them height. I did serve mine with some butter and maple syrup, but if you don't have maple syrup, they're just fine on their own as they are. They're full of flavor and absolutely delicious. If you have sugar on hand, you can always kind of make like a little simple syrup to put on top of it, and that's great too. For this next one, we're making roasted chicken legs with carrots and sweet potatoes. This is definitely a fall favorite of mine, and you've probably seen it in a few videos before. And you know what? I'm just going to show it again because it's so fabulous. It tastes like something you would get at a restaurant, but it's so inexpensive and delicious. So I'm just peeling up and then chopping up 2 carrots, and then I'm also going to peel up and chop up my sweet potato. And then put all that in one bowl and toss with a tablespoon of olive oil, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, about a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of dried parsley, a teaspoon of dried thyme, and a teaspoon of dried sage. Now, I do cook for my family all the time, but you can see that I still do things in weird orders sometimes. Why? I'm not sure. So I seasoned everything ahead of time. Then I put 4 of my chicken legs right on top of there. And then I put all of the same oils and seasonings on top of the chicken and then mixed it all together. So you could probably do it all at once and just double everything. For what reason I did it this way, not exactly sure. And then you want to take your chicken and all of your vegetables and just pour that out onto a sheet pan. You can use parchment paper on the bottom, or I have one of those silicone covers. I do have a cool fall one. I have not been able to find that online to link it for you. I got it at TJ Maxx last year, but I will make sure to link one of these silicone covers in my Amazon store in my description box. And then you just want to bake these at 425 degrees for about 40 minutes. You want to make sure the internal temperature of the chicken is at least 165 degrees and they're cooked all the way through. But as you can see, it is hot and delicious when it comes out. This cooks all those vegetables right in those juices, and the flavor is just so fall and so amazing. It's incredible how inexpensive this is for how flavorful it is. And this is truly a delicious night of dinner. And now it's time to make a truly incredible chicken noodle soup. This is so hearty and so fall. You want to start with 2 ribs of celery, but you could really add as much as you like, especially since we already bought the celery. And then you want to dice up 4 large carrots. You really want to think about the size of the carrots that you want in this dish. Same thing with celery. So if the end of the carrot is really large, you may want to cut it in half because it's going to be like a bite-sized piece, right? You really don't necessarily need a super large round of carrot in your soup. Then you want to melt a tablespoon of butter in a stock pot over medium-high heat and add in those vegetables. Saute these for about 3 minutes. And then while that's cooking, you just want to take about 3 cups of chicken off the bones of the chicken legs and just dice those up. You want it to be, again, the bite-sized pieces that you would want for your soup. Into those vegetables, you want to add your seasonings, 1 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, 1/8 teaspoon of dried rosemary, 1/8 teaspoon of dried sage, and a little bit of crushed red pepper flakes if you'd like to add a little spice. And at this point, I was saving my fresh onion for the chicken pot pie, so I used a teaspoon of onion powder. And then to that pot, you want to add about 10 cups of that chicken broth. You need to bring that up to a boil. And then because I had it, I added a cube of chicken bouillon. If you don't have it, that's totally fine. They're super inexpensive, about $1 for 8 or even cheap for a huge thing of it, and it gives so much flavor. And you just want to bring this up to a boil and then reduce your heat to low and cook for about 30 minutes. And then you can add in your chicken, and we're just gonna let the hot soup kind of warm this chicken all the way through. And on the side, you wanna cook up your pasta. And because we're just using like regular pasta noodles, I really wanted to cook it on the side and then serve the soup over the pasta so that it didn't, I feel like pasta really takes on liquid and kind of gets huge and mushy and not good. So I like to serve the pasta separate and then pour the soup over, and that way you can kind of make sure that that pasta stays fresh and that your soup, you have as much pasta as you like in your soup. This soup is so flavorful, so delicious. It makes a ton, at least 2 days worth for us. And it's just so soul warming, really, with all these meals. I mean, that's the thing about fall meals, but I love that we're doing this for so little money and still filling our bodies with such good food. Next up, we're making butternut squash mac and cheese and chili. I like to eat this as one meal, and it's funny because I kind of like to have a little bite of mac and cheese and have a little bite of chili, but I don't want it like all mixed together. Like, it's not a chili mac. I want it separate. So we're going to kind of make both these meals in tandem. I'm just going to microwave this butternut squash that I got as like a steam in a bag from Walmart, according to package directions. Start boiling some water with salt for the other half of our elbow macaroni, and then grate down about half of my block of cheddar cheese. I could actually grate down the whole thing because this is all we're going to use it for, is the chili and the butternut squash. But I just need a couple of cups for our butternut squash mac and cheese. And then you want about a cup of milk and that 2 cups of cheese and that whole package of butternut squash. I just poured mine into my NutriBullet, but you could also use a blender or even immersion blender if you put it in like a container and then push the immersion blender down. You do want to add some seasonings to this, about a half a teaspoon of onion powder, a half a teaspoon of garlic powder, and a little bit of salt and pepper. And then you just want to blend this up really well. It's going to make this amazing cheese sauce because that butternut squash is hot, and it's actually going to melt the cheese and make a warm, cheesy, delicious sauce that I've never tried this method before. But when I did it, I was pleasantly surprised, and it's so, so simple. So I just set that aside while the pasta finished cooking, and I just started dicing about a half an onion. We're going to add that to our chili. And then you want to get oil or butter set in the bottom of a large pot. Cook that over medium-high heat. Add in that onion as well as that 1 pound of taco turkey. You want to cook the turkey until it's fully browned. Then you can add in 1 drained can of kidney beans, 1.5 cups of water, 1 can of stewed tomatoes, and 1 can of tomato sauce. And then to that, for seasonings, we're going to add a tablespoon of chili powder and a half a tablespoon of garlic powder. And you want to bring this to a boil and then reduce your heat to low. Cover and let simmer for 15 minutes. And then while that was simmering, I finished up my butternut squash mac and cheese. Just want to drain out the pasta. Once it's all the way cooked, pour it into either a bowl or a casserole dish, and then you just pour the melted cheese butternut squash mixture right on top, mix it right in, and that is all there is to it on that one. Super simple. And so everything was kind of ready at the same time. Like I said, I kind of like to have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. This makes a ton of food. This was enough, again, for 2 days for my family, and it is a fall tradition around here. For this one, we're making chicken pot pie casserole. This is an amazing way to kind of stretch chicken and vegetables and really make it into a couple larger meals. You want to start with 2 tablespoons of butter in the bottom of your pan, melt that up. Then you're gonna add 1 medium onion chopped and cook that onion, stirring frequently. for about 5 minutes. You want to cook it down. Then we're going to add in that 12-ounce package of frozen mixed vegetables, and you don't even need to defrost those, just pop them right in there. And then you want to add the rest of your chopped chicken, so really as much as you have. I probably had close to 3 cups, which is quite a bit to add to this recipe, but I don't mind if it's extra chicken in it because you really can't go wrong with that. And then you want 1 3/4 cup of that chicken broth, about a half a teaspoon of dried thyme, and a teaspoon of seasoned salt. And then we're going to make up a slurry with 3/4 cup of milk and 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. This is kind of like a cream of chicken alternative. You want to heat the chicken and vegetables until boiling and then stir in that cornstarch slurry. And then you're going to heat that again until just boiling and then pour that right into a 9x13 casserole dish. This should be a nice thick mixture, you know, reminiscent of what you would see inside of a chicken pot pie. And then you want to make the topping with just 1 egg, a half a cup of milk, and 3/4 cup of Bisquick and 2 tablespoons of melted butter. So you just want to mix all of that together, and it's going to make almost like a thin biscuit type topping. And then you want to just put that kind of in dollops over the top because it's kind of thin, so it's almost like cake mix. You want to pour that right on top of the casserole. And then we're going to bake this for about 30 minutes until that topping comes out clean. So like if you put a toothpick in it, you would want to make sure that it's cooked all the way through. It's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but it is so fabulously delicious. And this is 2 full meals for my family. So it's lots and lots of food, and we're using, you know, majority of everything that we have up.
For this one, we're making a mall classic, or for me at least, it was always the mall. We're making cinnamon rolls at home. So you want to heat up a cup of milk just to like warm. You want warm milk. And then we're going to add in, you can either do like 1 packet of active dry yeast, or I just bought these and I leave them in my freezer. And that way the yeast stays super fresh. And so on the package, it actually says that you use 2 1/4 teaspoons to make 1 package. So I've got 2 and about 1/4 here. We're just gonna mix this together and we're gonna let it sit for a few minutes until it gets frothy. The great things about these is like, yes, we're going through work, it takes time, but we're gonna make 16 cinnamon buns, which is just wild. This is also gonna be perfect for like the holiday time because you can make these ahead for Christmas morning or even Thanksgiving morning because you don't wanna like cook, you don't be cooking too much, so you can make them the day ahead and then just heat them up. I don't even know how much a Cinnabon is these days. I used to get one like and split one with my mom at the mall. We went back to school shopping. That's kind of my memory of it. But yeah, we're getting 16 of them for like pennies on the dollar. So yes, you're making them, but they're also gonna freeze well and they're just gonna be so special. So just while that's frothing up, you're gonna kind of wait till the top of it froths, and I can already see it putting some bubbles on top, so that's amazing. I'm putting a half a cup of sugar into the bottom of my stand mixer, 1/3 cup of melted butter, got 2 eggs, a teaspoon of salt. Look at this bubbly mixture. This is awesome. So you want it to be pretty much dissolved, and you're gonna start to get some bubbles on the top. So initially I tried to use the bread paddle to like mix this up, but it wasn't really working. But I know it'll work a lot better once I add in the dry ingredients, the flour. So I'm just gonna kind of mix this as much as I can with my spatula. It's just that there's like a lot of sugar on the bottom. I wanna make sure that it's all evenly mixed. But the key here is that it gets mixed, and you could definitely just start off with a paddle attachment and then add the dough hook, but I wanted to try it with the dough hook, and that's not gonna work, but this should be fine anyway. So I'm gonna put 4 to 4.5 cups of flour into the bowl while the dough hook is going, and we wanna keep kneading it until it becomes smooth and elastic. So at first it's gonna be sticky, but once it kneads long enough, it's gonna end up being like this smooth ball. And it's 4 to 4.5 cups because it's gonna depend on, I think it's like your elevation and all these things. You just wanna make sure that it becomes that elastic ball and it's not too sticky. You see how it's pretty smooth and soft now? At this point, it's not sticky. So that means we're pretty much there. I'm just gonna take this out and put it into an oiled bowl. and we're gonna give it an hour to rise or double. So if you're in a colder environment, like my house is usually pretty cold, you may want to let it go a little bit longer. Find the warmest place that you can. I'm gonna put mine right underneath my heater because it's only October, but it's still chilly in here. We're true New Englanders. We're not gonna turn the heat on yet, but I do have a pump. So we have like a mini split. So if it's air conditioning and heat, I did turn that on in the kitchen because it's chilly, but everywhere else we're just wearing sweatshirts. That's fine. Sometimes you do have to wait a little bit longer. Like this was probably like an hour and a half for me. And then you'll really know. Like when I pulled, I'm like, I really know this is doubled. Before I was like, when I looked at it after an hour, I'm like, it's just not quite there yet. So you really want to see it double. You want to give it that time. The bowl is actually warm, so like also you kind of know then. So we're just gonna break this in half. I do have like a pastry, I don't know what this is called. Bread knife, that's not it. So you're gonna try and roll this out into like a long piece. Figure out how to get this to go.
This is definitely giving me some like Pac-Man vibes, but I did just want to show you this part where I really fully rolled the thing out because I just wanted to show you that, you know, we're not all perfect. You're not going to be able to, you know, make the dough perfect. Maybe you will, maybe you're like so much better than me. But you can still make delicious things even if it doesn't look amazing while you're doing it.
Ideally, we're going to get 8 cinnamon rolls out of this, so that is the hope. Why did I do this so funny? It's okay. It's okay. All right, so you want to take this and rub about half the butter onto it.
And while the dough was rising, I just made a mixture of 3/4 cup of brown sugar and 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. And you just want to mix that well. And that is basically the mixture that you're going to kind of evenly put over this dough. And in this case, you only want to use half of it because we are going to use the other half to make another 8 cinnamon rolls with the rest of the dough.
And then we're going to sprinkle about half of the filling inside of this. It smells amazing. I mean, butter, sugar, cinnamon. Doesn't get much better than that. And we're just gonna roll this the long way. And then you wanna get 8 out of this. I have some floss here, so ideally you wanna use dental floss. And you wanna use floss that's not flavored. So like I had some minty stuff upstairs, that's not gonna work. But this is just gonna cut it nice and easy for us without smushing it down. And it's easy to get 8 because you can just do half and then another half. And then another half. And you know, unless we're professional bakers here, it may not be perfect. You may not end up with all identically sized rolls, and that is okay because it's all about what it tastes like. And this is just for fun anyway, right? I think a lot of baking, like nobody forced you to do it, right? Obviously we want to get better at it over time, but don't be too hard on yourself. For example, I know that my one way down the end here, you know, not beautiful, a little bit smaller than the one on this side, and that's okay. You're gonna need 2 9x13 pans for this because each 9x13 is gonna hold
8 of them.
And I am just gonna grease down the pan. You can use spray or you can grease it yourself. I like the idea of kind of putting the side that's cut up. I'm gonna cover these and then we're also going to let these sit for another hour. I'm gonna do the same thing with the rest of the dough. All right, these, I mean, I guess they're doubled. They're definitely getting puffy. They're definitely puffy. So I have preheated the oven to 350 degrees and I'm gonna bake them for 30 minutes. So the frosting is really easy. We're just gonna make this while they cook. It depends on when you wanna eat them. I'm not gonna put the frosting on right away. I'd like to wait till it cools down a little bit because that way it doesn't just slide off. If you put it on super hot cinnamon rolls, it's just gonna slide off everywhere. So you need a 1/2 cup of softened butter, room temperature butter, which is actually just 1 stick. 4 ounces of cream cheese, and this is room temperature cream cheese, so it's nice and softened. You need a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract, literally like a pinch of salt, 1/8 a teaspoon. Salt really does do wonders for stuff like this. I'm gonna do 1.5 cups of confectioner sugar. Yes, you heard that right, a lot. And you just wanna mix it well until it's smooth. Plug it in. Then mix it well until it's smooth. So these puffed up quite nicely. Oh my gosh, so delicious looking. This was about 23 minutes, so you know, it depends. You could probably go a little bit longer if you wanted to. I don't want to. I like them like this. And then I just waited for them to cool slightly, and I frosted the ones that we were gonna eat. So there was obviously 16 of these here, which my family was not all gonna eat at once. So I like to separate the extra frosting and just leave it off until we're ready to heat them up and eat them. So we just had some right here, right now. They were amazing. You'll see in a second here, I kind of like took a piece off, and you can see how delicious and how well that bread cooked up, or I mean, it's cinnamon roll, right? But the frosting is 100% Cinnabon frosting, and these were really incredible. For this one, we're gonna make a copycat Panera bread, broccoli and cheddar cheese soup. We're gonna start with a 1/2 cup of chopped onion, 1 cup of finely chopped carrots, 4 cups of finely chopped broccoli florets, and 2 cloves of minced garlic. You can also hear in the background, I have some bacon going because I'm gonna put bacon crumbles on top. It's not really a Panera thing, but it's a me thing. So if you have bacon, cook it up. You can always also use the Walmart or Costco bacon bits, or even just the sprinkle ones. In a medium pot, I've melted 1/4 cup of butter, which is I think 4 tablespoons. I'm just gonna add the chopped onion and garlic and cook for like 6 to 8 minutes, just until it's tender and like translucent. Then you wanna stir in the broccoli, carrot, 3 cups of chicken stock, 2 cups of half and half. And to that, I'm just gonna add 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 2 bay leaves, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. And we're just gonna bring this up to a boil. Just turn it down a little bit and like put it at a simmer. And then once those vegetables are tender, that's gonna be like 10 minutes or so. We're gonna mix in 1/4 cup of cornstarch until the water is smooth. So you just wanna like stir it into the soup, make sure there's no lumps or anything like that. We're gonna bring that up to a boil and cook until it's kind of thickened. At this point, you wanna remove those bay leaves, and then you can stir in 2.5 cups of shredded cheddar cheese. I happen to have white cheddar. I think you could also use like yellow cheddar. You could really use whatever type of cheese you have or want to use. I think it would even taste good like with some Swiss or Gruyere. So whatever cheese you have on hand, I think you can still make this. I mean, it's not gonna be exactly Panera copycat at that point, but I think you can make it work. I'm just gonna serve this in bread bowls. So I got these little bread bowls at the bakery section in my store. They're $1.99 each, so I feel like that's kind of expensive for a dinner. I was kind of splurging, so I was like, oh, it fit in my budget, and I thought it'd be cute and fun to have. But you totally don't need to do that. You can just serve it with some like hunks of bread on the side, even like oyster crackers or something like that. And this makes a magnificent dinner. It tastes just like Panera. It is so good. For this one, we're making Olive Garden chicken and gnocchi soup. I know this is like super popular. We're gonna start by chopping 1 stalk of celery, 1/2 a white onion. We're gonna dice that up, 2 teaspoons of minced garlic, and then 1/2 cup of shredded carrots. We're just gonna shred those up. And then you're also gonna need, I have about 2 cups of cooked chicken. I just cubed it up. You could use rotisserie chicken, you could use shredded chicken, you could do, I think you can even do canned chicken. I mean, it's not gonna be exactly like Olive Garden then, but canned chicken would suffice. And then heat about 1 tablespoon of olive oil in a large pot over medium heat. And once that's warm, we're gonna add in that celery, onions, garlic, and carrots. And we're gonna saute that until those onions are translucent. That usually takes me like 3 to 5 minutes. Then you wanna add in the chicken. and 4 cups of chicken broth. I'm actually gonna use chicken bouillon, so whatever you have on hand I think will be just fine. Also gonna add about a teaspoon of salt, a little bit of pepper, a teaspoon of dried thyme, and then bring that to a boil. At this point, it's like almost done. We're gonna add in the gnocchi and boil for 3 minutes, and then bring it down to a simmer for 10 more minutes. And then once everything's simmered together, that's really gonna get the flavors in there. You wanna stir in 2 cups of half and half, and then a cup of spinach. And I'm actually gonna bring this over a friend's house. We're having a trunk or treat celebration, and it's gonna be a great potluck.
And it really was. Everyone was super happy with it. You can see that I transferred it to a crock pot, and that way I could keep it warm. And then right before we were ready to serve, I was able to add in that half and half and that fresh spinach so that it didn't like curdle or the spinach didn't wilt down too much. And it was absolutely delicious. Something that I've made, actually this was from last year when I originally filmed this. So I've made it a few times since then, and it's really become a family favorite. Next up, we're making the classic Wendy's chili.
So you just want to brown up your ground beef and then drain out any of the liquid. And then we're just going to add in a 1/4 cup of celery chopped. This is about 1 stalk, as they say. This is 3 small tomatoes diced and 1 small to medium onion. If you don't have fresh onion, you could always use onion powder, probably about a tablespoon. You want about 30 ounces of tomato sauce. So I have these 2 tomato sauce cans, and then unfortunately you don't want to cook up the cover. This always happens to me. Comment below if it happens to you too. I don't have any more of like the plain tomato sauce, so we are just going to use the local grocery store brand like pasta sauce, and it's just going to give a little extra flavor. And since I really need like 4 of these, we're just going to add. We need a container of diced green chilies. You need about 4 cans of kidney beans, or you could use half pinto beans. I cooked up my own kidney beans yesterday, so I have to kind of figure out what 4 cans of beans is. It seems like it's almost the whole pound. I'll have this much left in my container. So that was almost a pound of kidney beans. We're making a ton of chili because we are going over to a friend's house today. And this all worked out really perfect because they were actually talking about ordering out this evening. And I was laughing because I'm doing this fast food at home video. And I was like thinking to myself, ain't nobody ordering out when they're friends with Meals Maria. So happily, I was like, I'm gonna make Wendy's chili for the whole crew. So I did put extra beef in this because I just had extra. This is about probably almost 3 pounds. We really only need like 2 pounds. So this is like extra thick. We are gonna also add 2 cups of water. And I love when I'm cooking with something like this and I have my like little container. I'm like, I don't even have to use any of my dishes. We're gonna throw this away after. And I know this is 8 ounces. And let us not forget about seasonings. So you need 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of cumin, 3 tablespoons of chili powder, and 1.5 teaspoons of black pepper. This is looking mighty hearty. The only thing I'm gonna do differently with this is just because I did add that extra ground beef. I wanna make sure that the seasonings are not off. So at the end, I am gonna check just to make sure that it's flavored enough, and we'll add more chili if we need to, more chili powder, or more salt if we need to, or more both. Another great thing about making chili for a party or for friends is that I am gonna get this started on the stove at my house. We're gonna let it kind of cook for about 45 minutes, and then we're gonna go over to my friend's house. I'm gonna put it back on the stove at their house. We're not gonna eat for another hour. And that way the chili is actually cooking for close to 2 hours by the time that we eat. And I didn't have to worry about, getting it all done ahead of time. I just put everything in the pot, and then it's actually freshly ready at the party, and it's not like cold, or we didn't have to reheat it or anything.
Everyone said this was exactly like Wendy's chili, so it was perfect. I hope you absolutely loved all of these recipes. If you love this marathon as much as I do, make sure to like this video and comment so that all the other people that are out there that might enjoy the video will also get to see it. And if you are looking for more holiday and fall, winter, all the inspiration, make sure to subscribe. I'm going to be posting videos every week. See you all very soon.